Okay, great. You able to hear me?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Well, it's been an interesting morning. I got up at 3 in the morning, and now I'm here in Ohio. It's great. But I met Brian on the way over here and talking through just kind of some of the initiatives of All Aboard Ohio, the history of All Aboard Ohio, and it's just really exciting to hear some of the stories of where you guys have come from, and the vision of bringing more robust passenger rail to your state, where we've been the benefactor of that for some time now. To get that into that in my presentation. I do have family from Ohio, so my mother and my great uncle actually worked for the railroad, worked for New York Central, and called Ohio home. My mother grew up here in Marion, so a lot of history in my family for this state. But I am I'm the Rail Division Director for the North Carolina DOT. So we house in the DOT our management of our passenger rail program. We also manage a lot of other things in our DOT related to rail, and it all is kind of housed under one umbrella under the organization that I manage, the Rail Division. And we have a mission statement that basically surrounds our activity, and that is the safe and efficient movement of people and goods on North Carolina's railroads through freight, passenger, and safety programs that support job creation and economic growth. That is one of the things that we've really enjoyed in our partnership with the executive branch and our General Assembly has been a robust and complete program of managing the state's rail system, which, like Ohio, is going to be mostly entirely in private hands. But there's a lot of economic activity that can come from managing it from a total perspective. Freight, passenger, and safety. So we really take that mission statement seriously and work hard every day to have programs that support it. In our state, we have about 3,400 miles of rail corridor. At the height of our system, we had about 4,800, and I think that was around 1945. We had that mileage, and then because it's a private system, and not publicly owned and not publicly fed by taxpayer dollars, for its totality, there was some attrition over time because there had to be a return on investment for these lines, and specifically in the deregulation of around 1980 with the Staggers Act, we saw a lot of attrition of lines in our state. That was the largest amount of lines that were kind of spun off and removed from the network. And it's within that context that we really began as a state to think about the rail system as a whole and passenger rail and what could be done to make sure that the rail system is preserved for all the types of things that we want to do as a state with it. So my division has every rail aspect of the DOT. We have 47 full-time employees, and then we have a lot of contract staff as well that support all the different activities that we do. Everything from terminal operation to project delivery to safety. These are the four major areas that we operate in. We have a full-service planning and development group that basically does project development, including both state level and federal level environmental documentation. And then there's a freight and logistics program that's also kind of a major component of our program that's buried in that group. We deal a lot with safety across the state. We have all of the grade crossing safety programs, our trespasser reduction safety programs, our education programs, as well as our FRA and FTA oversight programs for monitoring those types of facilities across our state are all housed in a group called Engineering Coordination and Safety. We have a full-service project delivery group that not only manages the railroad projects that we do, but also helps our Division of Highways every day to try to manage through their projects, because railroads historically and everybody knows are not always the easiest organizations to deal with as private organizations. And then finally, operations and facilities. We have a number of terminals And we own passenger equipment. And we support about 110 miles of rail corridor today, soon to be about double that in our state. It's about almost 200 miles of rail corridor in our state. And so we, last year, completed a report for the first time to really look comprehensively, again under the same idea of, what is the comprehensive way that this rail system is contributing to North Carolina, and how is our division able to support that? We looked at that total system and its economic contribution on an annualized basis and determined that the system has tremendous economic impact. Specifically, that it contributes $20 billion to our economy on an annualized basis. $990 million in state and local taxes, 88,000 in direct and indirect jobs supported, 860 businesses that rely directly on the railroad to support their activity, and 116 rail businesses located in North Carolina. This is based on a picture in 22 and some of the rail data from pre-COVID as well to make sure it was balanced. But that's a lot of economic activity. And we wanted to look at it comprehensively because there are a lot of things that we do at the state that support this economic activity as well as the private investment to ensure that we've got good return on all the dollars spent. So I'll focus a little bit I'll focus a lot on our passenger program because I know that's what you all are interested in specifically. This is our current operating map in North Carolina. The predominance of the state-supported system, the state-supported routes operate between Charlotte and Raleigh, and then Raleigh north along the CSX line up into Virginia and DC and New York. We have two primary routes that we support. That's the Piedmont service, which has several daily frequencies between Raleigh and Charlotte and the points in between. Then we have a daily frequency of the Carolinian, which operates between Charlotte and New York every day in both directions. Did we lose the signal?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
You gotta do
We're back. Okay. Wow. I'm IT too, apparently. But anyway, so and then this system basically rests on top of Amtrak's national system trains. We have 4 national system trains that operate. Actually 5. One that doesn't stop. 4 national system trains.
Oh my goodness.
Crescent, the Silver Meteor, the Silver Star, now the Floridian, the Palmetto, and the Auto Train all operate through North Carolina. And with the exception of Auto Train, all those trains also make stops, and there's a lot of connectivity between those trains in our state. There's also, in the eastern part of our state, currently connections using Amtrak's throughway bus model to connect specifically to our Carolinian service at Wilson. It's picking up a number of communities over there, and it's a popular service as well. So a lot of connectivity, but we still like to refer to this as the folks that are listening. This is still our starter kit. We've been at this business for a long time, but our service is concentrated in sort of the central part of the state. And there's a lot of other folks that have reached out to us that are really interested in seeing it expand further. On our state-supported side, this is what our service schedule looks like between Raleigh and Charlotte. 10 trains a day, 5 trains in each direction. I'll tell you, frequency, it really is everything because once you start to build frequency into your system, the opportunities for folks to use it throughout the day becomes much higher. And I've got a ridership slide that can show you what we've just been doing over the last few years. We have a mixture of all-stop trains and also some more express-type trains because as we've listened to our communities, there's both a balance of interest in trains meeting the needs of our rural and smaller communities as well as the folks that want to go the longer distances. And so we balance that by providing some express service as well as all station stops. So this is the story that most of the folks in our state, our elected leaders, get interested in. Is are folks really using the system? And the short answer is yes. We're 55% higher in ridership now than we were in 2019. And that's with adding two additional round trips in that time period. But you can see how much we dipped during the COVID pandemic, 2020. but we've been doing double-digit ridership increases year over year since then, as we've seen the population in our state really lean into this as a major way to move. Now these trips are 100 to 200 miles. I mean, these are not just are these, we have 721,000 at the end of calendar year 24, but these folks are going 100 to 200 miles. So you're talking about nearly 100 million passenger miles, that this system is producing. That's a lot of lane miles, if that's traffic on the roadway. All right, so to our story, we've been doing this a long time. 1988, Republican Governor Jim Martin started the governor's passenger rail task force, later named the Rail Task Force, because it became broader than just passenger rail. And that task force established a committee of 15 mostly conservative members of our state, throughout the state, members of our communities, as well as subject matter experts. And they established a report that looked at restarting passenger rail service, specifically the Carolinian service and then the Piedmont service that would operate between Raleigh and Charlotte as a balance of the Carolinian. That led to, in 1990, actually, the report was issued in '89 out of that committee, and then they, out of the task force, and then they immediately, the governor's office worked with our General Assembly and established a very modest appropriation to begin the Carolinian service in 1990. So we've been operating the Carolinian now for 35 years since its start then. The report also recommended a Piedmont service, which would basically balance for our higher population area of Raleigh, Charlotte. And it took some time to start that service up because Amtrak didn't have equipment, so we had to actually procure some secondhand equipment and build a terminal to support that equipment. And the outcome of that was 1995, we started that service. Now at the same time, we were working with the freight railroads to make sure that not only were we starting service, but we had a robust program that was looking at things like capacity and safety. And those types of activities that wouldn't just support the passenger trains, but also support the freight network. So that was part of our messaging. And it has been our messaging all along, is that we want to do things that work to make sure that the freight rail system is made whole and can actually serve and expand the growing manufacturing and other types of business in North Carolina. So began really with looking at safety. We started a program called the Passenger Safety Program, which led to the Seal Quarter Program. That was targeting grade crossing warning devices that were aged out or redundant crossings and that sort of thing. And basically over the 7 years from 95 to 2002, upgraded every crossing along this route and got it just up to 79 miles an hour and also eliminated a lot of crossings. So that was really where we really started, was in safety. And then following that, in 2002, we began something called the North Carolina Railroad Improvement Program through both appropriations through our General Assembly, for the capital program, as well as leaning into some federal enhancement money through the ICE-T at the time. And we did some capacity improvements. We lengthened some sidings, we added a signal system on the railroad where it was used to be just dark territory, and made some significant improvements so that we were no longer hand throwing switches on the routes, which is what was happening, and freight and passenger trains were able to be fluid through there. That led into 2010, where we applied for the under the ERA program, American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, for substantial funds to make a dramatic improvement between Raleigh and Charlotte to add multiple additional frequencies. So you can see that we're adding round trips as we go. It's taken a lot of time, but we basically only kind of crawl before we walk. We've been adding trains as we've completed programs, and we're now at the 5 trains a day. And then our vision is to lean into the Corridor ID program to reach more communities throughout North Carolina, and then have a connection to the Northeast called the S-Line, which I'll get into a little bit. So I've already kind of gone through some of this, but the task force under Governor Jim Martin really a bipartisan effort that led to appropriations through our General Assembly, and also looking for federal funds to support the program, which we've been successful at. We began those services under 403B, which is the predecessor to PREA 209. That's how states were able to support Amtrak service. And really was all housed under unique partnerships with our private partners in Amtrak. Norfolk Southern, North Carolina Railroad Company, which is actually a state-owned railroad company, but is managed as a private company, and of course Amtrak. They have all these different entities have different relationships. Norfolk Southern is the operator in this case. They operate the freight, dispatch, and maintain the railroad. North Carolina Railroad Company owns the property, the right-of-way, and the tracks. Amtrak is our service provider, directly under contract to the Department of Transportation, as well as they have agreements with Norfolk Southern for the operation of the trains, and then of course for the Piedmont service, NCDOT owns and maintains the equipment in the yards and provides the equipment and pays the bills. CSX is also a partner in this service because they have an operating territory between for about 7 miles out of Raleigh West, and they also are the predominant operator of the lines that the Carolinian operates on, so we talk to them frequently too. As I mentioned, we use an incremental approach. We didn't try to start all at one time. We tried to be very modest in the way we approached it, especially with funding, to make sure that we crawled before we walked and walked before we ran. We wanted to make sure that our passenger rail program was balanced with safety and freight improvements within what we do. It allowed us to use language and bring the freight railroads on board. As I mentioned, infrastructure improvements led to our additional frequencies, looking for win-win opportunities, improving safety capacity and modernization of the railroads, things that the freight railroads could take advantage of, with a goal of growth over time. And then, of course, ridership. In my state, ridership really is the metric that I get asked about the most. Are people using the system? Is the system growing? I mentioned our ARRA-funded program. We called it the Piedmont Improvement Program. This was a $545 million program that was, it was really juice in the arm of getting this railroad in great shape. Really transformed it from a sort of a limited, sort of historic sort of 1960s railroad into a really significant 21st century railroad. We built 35 miles of double track, upgraded the signal systems, built new sidings, closed 40 at-grade crossings, and with the real outcome was to make this thing as fluid as possible for freight and passenger. And today we're seeing the benefits of this program, that we have, NS is running more freight, and we have the ability to run more passenger trains, and those passenger trains are carrying more people. That was really the goal, and more safe, and with more safety as well. Building upon this, we have looked at getting into the space of the rail industry from a manufacturing perspective. We were able to recruit Siemens Mobility, who is the major intercity rail manufacturer to North Carolina, through a real strong coordination between our Department of Commerce, us, North Carolina Railroad Company, the county and state officials, and just a myriad of other stakeholders that really wanted to site a major manufacturing plant in North Carolina to support jobs. So we were successful in doing that. We brought it in 2023. This facility is already building trains, not just for North Carolina, but it's building trains for the Aero fleet, which is being deployed across the country. And it has a footprint that allows it to expand by 3 times over what it is there. So that 500 jobs can grow to 1,500 at this site. But it's very exciting. This is a rural area of North Carolina that needs jobs, and we were able to connect the rail industry, rail passenger program to that. So the future is one that we are coordinating and building upon. When we developed the quarter ID sort of proposal that we ultimately submitted to FRA, we did that on the basis of listening to communities all across our state. We wanted to make sure that we hadn't left out any interest that had been brought to us. And that we wanted to also create a connected map that showed that the system in North Carolina could all connect together. We could connect not just our state to other states, but also across the state. And so we submitted 12, which I think 12 corridors to the program with great support from leaders across our state, and won 7 of those corridors. So I think that might have been the most applications submitted by any one state, but we definitely wanted to lean into the opportunity to make sure that we didn't leave anybody out. So those 7 corridors are represented in green, and then we have some that did not make it in the first round that are blue, but we continue to find other sources to kind of make sure that those corridors are brought up. Notable is extensions of the system out to Asheville, connecting to Salisbury, which is connected to the core line, as well as Raleigh connecting down to Wilmington. There's a lot of North Carolina, a lot of rural communities in between those urban areas at the very end that are aging and are looking for additional transportation options as well as amenities to really improve their communities and the services that they provide. So this has been a real statewide effort, a collective effort. And kind of like I think what's happening in Ohio, we're working through with FRA on the step 1 process to finish scope, schedule, and budget, and then move into, with some of these corridors, into step 2, which is the service development plan. Specifically, Asheville, Salisbury, and Raleigh to Wilmington is sort of our major focus right now. Now, one other element in this map that's key that I'll talk about in the next few slides is a program called the S-Line. To move our state from only having the Carolinian as our only north-south connection, we've been working for really 30 years on developing a corridor that could handle the volume needed to move passengers, not just to North Carolina, Virginia, but also as we develop a system further south. That can't be done on the existing freight rail corridors, which are already heavily used by freight trains and slow and circuitous in a lot of ways. And so what we've been working with the leaders in our state as well as the leaders in the NCDOT is developing this program, develop a new route that connects to Raleigh as the center point in our state, and allows for frequent, fast, reliable, and safe rail transportation up speeds up to 125 miles an hour on that route. So that's our connection to the north, and then ultimately in the future we'll be working with our neighbors to the south to also with South Carolina and Georgia as those states come on more in line with passenger rail to advance further south. Let's go into a little more detail on the S-Line here. If you look at this map, you can see Raleigh to Charlotte has been our focus. We've done the PIT program there. That's where we've been increasing frequencies. Virginia has also been doing a major program between DC, Richmond, and the Chesapeake Bay area, Newport News, Norfolk area. They've been focused a lot on getting lots of frequencies into that corridor. What's missing is the thing in between. That's why we call the S-Line sort of a missing link, is that we have robust services on both of these ends and nothing in between. So what we're working on is this program to connect the two services so the trains aren't just terminating at both ends of the Raleigh to Charlotte and the Raleigh to Richmond segments, but they flow through, and there's continuity service and a lot more options for people to travel. And you can see, the safety benefits, the highway system benefits of reducing the burden on our highway system, urban and rural connections, meeting some communities that need these amenities for the mobility of their citizens, and then improving freight and passenger, as well as passenger capacity. So a little more on this. We have a lot of population centers in our two, between us and the Commonwealth of Virginia. You can see that North Carolina is growing at a significant rate, and a lot of that growth is happening in the Piedmont area, or what they call the Piedmont, between Raleigh and Charlotte. Currently at about 6.5 million people, but expected to grow significantly. this whole network is going to go from 20 million people to 25 million people, and that's obviously, if you know anything about, I mean, I know that Ohio has traffic issues in its communities, but we have only a few interstate roadways in our between our two states that are become tremendous traffic jams to the point where it's folks just avoid traveling if they can help it. Well, this provides them now an outlet by not only making not having them sit in traffic for hours on end, but also making their trip productive by giving them the opportunity to work, to leisure, to have meetings, other types of things that they would use with their time on the train that they cannot do or should not do when they're driving. So that's been a significant message. You know, just the project itself will save over an hour time. It's really going to save more like 2.5 hours when you consider all the restrictions that freight railroads have on the operation system, especially when they get congested. It's going to provide a lot of additional capacity. It becomes the backbone of our regional network, and it has a lot of support across state lines from the communities, the business communities, the industry, and the elected official support. And keeping elected officials apprised of what we're doing has been, I know that you all are doing a great job at that. That has been a significant component of what we do, both at our state level with our General Assembly, regular updates on exactly the performance metrics of our system, as well as any of our expansion plans. We regularly meet with members to talk about the specifics of what makes a good system. You know, the messages of, you know, what brings the freight railroads to the table, what they're interested in, and ensuring that there's an economic output, economic impact component to all of our messaging. This letter here is just one representative of a bipartisan letter that supported one of our grant applications specifically for the S-line, and you can see it went across lots of different members of Congress, both on the Senate side and on the congressional side, across both sides of the aisle. And through that, we've been successful in winning grants through the USDOT. I will say that North Carolina DOT has really leaned into, and this is not just true for our rail division, but for our highway division, that, you know, when you do want to do significant projects, you know, making sure that you're on that list for competitive discretionary grants is absolutely critical. We've actually stood up in our department a whole task force that monitors all the grant opportunities and matches the outcome, what based on program, whether it's highways, transit, or rail. Looks at all the programs and ensures that we're looking at the match funding components of where that sources can come from, whether it's from DOT or from localities, and working together to bring that. And we've been very successful. Our division in the last 15 years has brought nearly $2 billion to our state. So it's been, when you think about the impact of that on both the industry, supporting jobs, as well as making the state dollars go much, much further than they would otherwise, it's had a tremendous impact on our programs. What it has enabled us to do is, in cooperation with Virginia, we now have the engineering for the Richmond to Raleigh piece funded through a Christie grant. And then we have our first and most difficult phase of the S-line project between Raleigh and Wake Forest also funded. That first 18 miles is $1 billion project, but that's because you're trying to get out of an urban area, and it's the most complex. And so one of the strong messages we've had is we're building the hardest thing first. We want to build it at the best value possible. And then as we get into the easier areas, you know, that are more out in the countryside, that's going to be a lot easier to build. And the costs are easier to contain in those locations than building here. That's different than some other projects where they chose to build the easiest middle part first, and you know, we're just trying to be upfront and let folks know we're getting a value out of this. So just during the just for that first project, that $1 billion project, we've done an economic impact of that, and determined that $1.4 billion in economic impact will result from that first 18-mile segment. 8,022 job years, which is the employment of a person for 1 year, and then $42.5 million in state and local tax revenue will come out of just that, just during the implementation construction phase. That does not take into account the economic activity that the communities will experience by actually having the service there. The town of Wake Forest has gridlock traffic between Wake Forest and Raleigh and points west. And so they're very much looking forward to another option for folks to have, whether or not to spend their first 45 minutes of their day, frustrated in traffic. And they have another opportunity. And not just to get to Raleigh, but get to all kinds of other destinations across the state. Another piece of what we do that's been really important for us is working with the communities, visioning, when we bring this corridor to your community, how do you want to interface with it? How do you want your community to develop around this new opportunity? And so in 7 communities that we've been working with, specifically on the S-Line, they've really been working with our team. We actually help them to pursue grants to support what we call a transit-oriented development study. And they have been using that study to vision what their downtown areas will look like. Thinking about the next generation, thinking about who wants to move to these locations as population increases, and they create an amenity for them. So all these communities have leaned into this. In some cases, they've looked at historic buildings and said, we've got this vacant historic building we want to turn into something and activate this neighborhood. And that was one option, for instance, in Henderson. But then you've got Wake Forest that says, I've got a parking lot that I would like to activate and create a whole new retail and economic center. And so they've basically looked at some lots to do that, bringing a lot of activity into their downtown area and creating a lot more reason for folks to come and visit their communities and live there. So this has been great. This has really turned upside down the way the department has historically worked with communities. Typically, specifically in the highway side, we say, we've got this road we want to build and we're going to do it here, and we just need to make sure you're okay with it. In this case, we've taken the project to them and say, well, how do you want to envision this project being part of your community? And it's really been great. And actually, it's a model we're going to take across the state and work with these various communities as we look at the other services and the way to bring other services to the community. It helps them own the project and helps them see that there's a real outcome and benefit that directly impacts their community. In addition to our regular service, we've been doing special events. Over the last several years, we've been going to the NC State Fair. That generates a whole lot of passengers, but it's a very concentrated area where parking is near impossible, and you basically get folks on a train, they step out and walk literally a few hundred feet, and they're at the Ferris wheel. So that's been great, trying to handle these large events and get folks in from across the state. Santa's been riding our train in December, which gets everybody excited. And then we have a huge barbecue festival. Everybody's got their own barbecue, but Lexington specifically has a barbecue festival that draws 250,000 people. So we have a special stop there, and we're actually working on it's so successful, working on a permanent station at that location, just to support their community. Last year, we actually ran a train to the Open Express, the major golf tournament there at the Pinehurst Village, and not only did we sell out the train, we completely sold out the commissary and all the alcohol. I was so in the black on that train that my boss now is saying, how do I get that stuff on every train? We're working to make sure that we bring that amenity. But you can see that the clientele for that train, they were very excited. We also ran a train this year to a NASCAR race and sold that train out. And that was amazing. Literally, it was right across the road from the Rockingham Speedway, which is a historic NASCAR facility. And that was, you can imagine, that clientele was all beer hats and racing shirts. And they also sold out my commissary, but that was a good time. But really, just to demonstrate that this type of system can support all kinds of events. And when people are leaving these events, you don't have to worry about them driving, you don't have to worry about them getting into major accidents, and you can reduce the demand on our highway system and get folks in and out and give them a pleasurable experience instead of just leaving it with I'm just frustrated because I can't get out of the parking lot. I've just got a few more slides left. We have been doing feasibility studies on extending our network west and east in our state to reach those populations, to move the passenger rail system out of just the core, but into our rural communities and some of our farther out urban areas. Asheville was one. It was really interesting when we did our analysis on Asheville. It's 139 miles to connect all these communities from Salisbury, the main network, all the way out to Asheville. We studied 3 round trips for this, and the ridership was astonishing. We were looking at we have 100,000 local trips, just folks going in between these communities within the corridor. But then when you add, that connection to the primary route, it jumps to nearly over 400,000 passengers annually, that demonstrates a significant success. I mean, right now we're at 721,000 passengers, so this would add a huge amount of demand to our system. And we did some costs that were going to flow into our Corridor ID program. About $665 million all in for that 139 miles. If you guys know much about highway construction costs, 139 miles of
Oh my
anything
goodness, that's a lot of money.
Costs a lot of money. We have one roadway that's 3 miles long in Asheville that's costing us $3 billion just because of the connections and the right-of-way impacts and stuff like that. So here you have a corridor that basically is underutilized. It has a few freight trains, which are really important for us to continue and want to grow that. But we have an asset here. We can, with not a lot of capital costs, can put it into a 21st century condition and move a lot of people on. Same with our Wilmington service corridor as well. This is our beach route. A lot of folks excited about this as well, connecting some rural communities in eastern North Carolina as well. Here we evaluated 2 routes. We landed on one that was the fastest and quickest, and we also 3 round trips and about $800 million to do this one. A little more. We got to rebuild we actually a little bit of a history. There's 27 miles that the state bought back not too long after the governor's task force that I mentioned earlier in my presentation. That 27 miles we preserved because we knew this corridor could be used for something. We didn't want to see it just go to the weeds and become nothing. And so we preserved it, and we're looking at now as a strategic passenger connection, but also a strategic port connection for us as we get into Wilmington. So some opportunities here to really see the benefit of not just a passenger operation, but also increased freight. I want to just talk a little bit at the end of my presentation about the other things that we do. The passenger appropriation for our budget is a little over a quarter of our budget. We have our division receives about $45 million annually to support all of our programs, and that's safety, freight, our passenger program, and port preservation. And so half of our budget goes to a program we call Freight Rail Crossing Safety Improvements. This is our short line improvement program, our industry recruitment program, our safety program, ensuring that we've got important things done to our freight crossings that can't be just done under regular funding, and that we're looking at strategically at the use of the rail system, diverting highway trips to rail to make sure we get as much loads on the rail as we can to preserve our highway system. And then also we've got funding in here to support our rail corridors and acquire additional corridors. So a lot goes into here. It does a lot. So about 22 million of that 45 is this program, and we've been able to garner 1.25 billion just since 2014 when it started in private capital investment, 36 new industry expansion projects, 2,500 jobs, 342 miles of railroads have been upgraded, to Class 2 and increased speeds. We've modernized 204 railroad bridges, upgraded 1,100 railroad crossings, removed 13 of them, and then supported our ports with the $19 million. They were actually an applicant for our grant programs into this. So there's a lot going on here, and it gives us a lot of credibility as we talk about passenger rail, that these are the kinds of things that we're seeing come out of the other funding that we're putting into the system. And this is a heat map of just where these investments are going. It's not all going to one area, it's going across our state, lots of different communities, and making sure that the railroad system stays whole. and continues to meet the needs of all of our communities across the state. We also are really heavily in the business of safety improvements, both at grade crossings and grade separations. Grade separations and safety is an applicable funding component within our strategic transportation investments portfolio. That is our program, our state transportation program that supports all investments, highway, ferry, aviation, and rail. And we do really well with this in the safety space. We're managing about 3,500 public crossings and closed about 314 since 1993. That STIP program is supporting currently 20 crossing consolidations, 16 grade separations, and 65 grade crossing warning device projects. And our unit is responsible for inventorying approximately 1,200 crossings across the state. So we've really institutionalized and professionalized this to really make sure that our system is robust, and it's robust for freight, it's robust for passenger, and that we're able to talk earnestly and honestly with all the different partners that North Carolina is really serious about the road system. And that concludes my presentation.